really important to have a plan and understand what your goals are.
In fact, my camel out there is suffering right now with a broken back.
So I actually found Pepe when it was only a couple of hours old, and I'm like, oh, this is a funny meme.
Oh my god.
Yo! Who is this Degen?
The old man is swing trading over years at a time. And it's like, that's where the real money is made.
The answer is a permanent loss. With single-sided staking, you don't have to worry about impermanent loss.
When really, at the end of the day, it's just the matter of a macro market. It's just what happens.
If you're aware, if you're disciplined, you can hone that into further financial growth.
Financial freedom, so we can actually live life and not have to be constantly living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, more or less, right?
Our content cannot and does not contain crypto financial advice. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, crypto degenerates, ducks and squirrels. I love that hat, by the way, Zenith. I saw you putting that on in the green room, and I'm like, oh, fuck yeah. This is going to be good. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you guys know the drill. Richard Hart's case is dismissed. Come and join us. We're going to read all about it. So for those of you guys that were not here long ago, we're skipping book club, by the way. Not only was this book pretty interesting, it was also super short. I was... Just a little bit of fun background information. I'm blood type A, and one of the first things that this book talks about is like, oh, blood type A people work out really well as vegetarians. And I'm like, I hate this book. So we'll cover it at a different point in time. But today we're going to be focusing on the Richard Hart trial and the motion to dismiss. We got the memorandum. The motion to dismiss has been accepted or something like that. I don't really know. I just got back from the shooting range, totally expecting to do a book club, and this shit plopped into my face. I went and checked like the portfolio checker over on Hex Scout, and it was like, whoa, number is up big right now. So that's pretty fucking cool. And then I rolled over to Deck Screener. I'm looking at all the RH tickers, and we're like 50% up on Icosa, 50% up on Hedron on the 24-hour. Like fucking 30% up on Hex, 60% up on some other, dim down other things. All these Richard Hart core coins are doing fucking crazy. My portfolio value has shot up like 30% in a day. So shout out to all you degens out there that have some fantastic I don't know if money in the bank is the quite right word, but if you're stoked to see some green candles, I'm super happy to see it. For those of you guys that don't know who I am, I guess we should introduce ourselves, shouldn't we? Since we're doing this stream here. For those of you guys that don't know who I am, my name is Will Stevenson. I'm going to be one of your two hosts for tonight, myself and Zenith. We would normally be doing a different type of stream, but we decided to make this a campfire story today. So I'm going to be your host. For those of you guys that don't know me, I'm a TV tower worker and broadcast tower guy that climbs around on towers all over the States. And in my free time, I like to podcast about financial well-being, personal self-improvement, and things of that nature. We also got Zenith over there, our budding crypto government and legal analyst and professional extraordinaire. What's the word I should use for you, bro? I really need to come up with a copywriting thing for you.
I think legal and government analyst is probably the best way to do it.
Legal and government analyst? Okay.
Yeah.
Does former Coast Guardsman officer and engineer come into play in there somewhere? That's pretty cool.
Sure. I have a little bit of my experience for the legal stuff comes from that, but a lot of it honestly just comes from paying attention to the news and then just being more than willing to read the documents and then ask the stupid questions and be like, please explain this process to me like I'm 5. So It's just doing the work. That's really all it is. Are we surprised?
Well, fucking, what's new and exciting with you, bro? How are you doing? How are you feeling? This is news to me. When did this come out? Like, because I've been away from computer all day long.
This literally was like the classic news that you released before the weekend to hope that no one hears about it. Because East Coast time, I'm pretty sure this came out at like 5 o'clock East Coast time.
Holy
so like right before everybody headed out the door for the weekend. But yeah, as far as Hexco goes, this is the hottest thing that's probably going to happen all year outside of maybe like the bull market top. So yeah, this is phenomenal. And I'll be honest, like the feelings it's surreal. I'm having feelings almost like I remember taking my last final back in college. And I just remember going back to my room and just being like, what now? It's over.
It's over.
Doesn't feel like it's over, but I guess it's over.
When Bitcoin hit 100,000, and it's like, oh, well, now what? And then, it hit 75,000 again. And then it hit 7. Hey, what are you going to do? I was like,
It's
bro,
true.
I want to show off my. I want to play a little show and tell here. I was shooting a cap and ball that my buddy welded a Bowie knife to, while we were out in the fucking woods, and this thing fucking sucks. Like as far as shooting, it's fucking awesome. I love it, but like you got to pour the powder in, fucking ram the ball down the barrel, and then put a little fucking brass cap nipple thing on here, and like I was shooting it, and this damn thing, like I had to pull the trigger and reset the hammer like 5 or 6 times every single time I wanted to shoot it. It was just blam nothing, blam nothing, blam nothing. And then oftentimes the percussion cap would go off and there'd be no explosion. And I would just sit there like, is this thing gonna fucking shoot or whatever the hell? So like it's been a fucking crazy, cool, awesome day. We're seeing some
True.
great
And
awesome
real
news.
quick for the YouTube reviewer and the folks at home, that is a black powder antique. That is not a firearm by YouTube regulations.
Correct.
Therefore,
it is not a firearm.
Correct. It is not a firearm.
That's why I brought that one up, is because that's the one that's not a firearm. So
Well done, sir. Well done.
there's other things I could pull up right now, but that was the cool one. So it was pretty cool. That was my first time firing my own like black powder things. I've had them for a long time, and I've never done anything with it. But have you ever done any black powder shooting?
I have not, but I want to. I inherited from my grandpa a black powder rifle and a black powder revolver, but it's an old, I think it's like a 1867 like model.
Is it a Navy or an Army?
It's a Navy, I think.
36. Okay, 36.
I think it's a 44.
Oh, the Navy
Yeah,
44s are a little bit more rare. That's good.
I know that you can go buy conversion cylinders, so it actually will take 44 long Colt. So that's the game plan, as opposed to
so it's not black powder.
Well, right now it is black powder, but you can replace the cylinder to swap it over.
Well. That could be fun. That could be dangerous. I fucking
True.
like it.
True.
All right, well, enough about this stuff. Enough about the weapons and everything. I just realized that I'm producer today, so I was gonna say, Mrs. Producer, could you bring up the chat motherfucking shoutouts? But I will go ahead and bring them up myself here, because that's the way that it goes. Shout out to Mrs. Producer, by the way, wheeling and dealing. She's taking care of some stuff for the effing hangout right now, so she is just on the fucking ball today. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up these chat shoutouts one by one. First up for the chat shoutouts, we've got none other than Tam saying, "What's up, fam?" Hello, Tam. It's good to see you. Glad to see that you are proud of us, and we are glad to have you in the chats, hanging out, having a good time. This is some fun, important portfolio news. So shout out to all the Hexicans out there. Next up, we've got Mind of Tron saying, "What's up? What's up, Tron?" Apparently, everyone's portfolios and Richard Hart ecosystem is what's up. So that's pretty cool. After that, we've got Brown, aka Farmer J. Hex Tent City is in full celebration. It's good to see you again, Farmer J. I would like to bring you back on the book clubs if you're still interested in doing those things. I know you've got your own stuff you got to take care of, amigo. So no sweat, nothing, no pressure, nothing. But it's good to see you again, Farmer J.
Always good to see him around these parts. I had the opportunity to hang out with him in Vegas in January, and we had an absolute blast. So good to see you again, buddy. Hope you're doing well.
Excellent. Yeah, there was some scuttlebutt in the Degen Roundtable. We're like, man, we haven't seen Farmer J in a while. I hope he's okay. I hope he's not dead. Didn't get like robbed or nothing under his little overpass. So it's good to see you, amigo. Welcome. Next up, we've got none other than my father, Will Stevenson Jr. I'm the third, by the way. No sound on my side. Troubleshooting.
He got it figured out, he said.
Okay, that's good. I was about to say, I hope that there's sound, because I cannot hear it. And then I liked your comment that the Hex Tent City is partying harder than Philly after a Super Bowl.
For the people that know, they know.
Yep. Go Birds or something. That's
Birds.
Philly is known for its riots, and it's not very friendly football fans. So as far as
it's that, and then anytime they're involved in some sort of major sports game, the city just riots regardless of the result. And my favorite little clip from this last one was beforehand they had videos of a lot of the light poles getting greased up so people wouldn't climb them, and then there was an announcement from the mayor that was like, "Do not climb the light poles. We are greasing them." So instead, they just knocked them over and carried around the light poles during the riot.
That's fucking cool, man. Like, at first I'm a little bit exasperated, but then on second thought, like, what a fucking bunch of G's. That's kick ass.
Hooligans. Absolute hooligans.
Oh, man. All right. It's good to see you, Zenith. Or shoot, you're right here. Yeah. What am I doing?
Good to see
Doing
you
the
as
normal
well.
chat shout out stuff. That's right. Next up in the chat shout outs, we've got Amber Simon. Hello there. Hello, Amber Simon. It is good to see you. Welcome, welcome to the stream. Glad that we could have you with us. It appears that my father is able to get sound, so that's all good. Next up in the chat shout outs, we've got Kay Hudson. What a nice Friday. Yes. It's like you were saying, Zenith. They tried to slip this one in, try to slip it under the radar, but
Thought we wouldn't notice, but we
there's
did.
like a bazillion Hexicans looking at everything. Like we got 45 people watching the show right now. So shout out to all of you guys. Remember to like that smash button. And yeah, they thought they could slip it right on past us, but
Not a
bro.
chance.
We got those fucking all seeing peepers over here in Hexico. So it's good to see you. Next up, we've got a man declaring victory, Pulse Jitsu with Fast Abdul. Victory.
This man had a great stream earlier today. He was talking about this as well.
Oh yeah? I saw him on with Corey Geary early on in the day, or at least it was early for me. I don't know what time it was over there in Puerto Rico where Corey streams from. But yeah, they were talking about the ink printer, and they were talking about Pulse Chain being a stable coin. So shout out to Corey with his Pulse Chain stable coin being up 40 or 50% or something crazy like that. I'm gonna go ahead and look at what it's on the 24-hour over on Dex Screener. I'm not going to share my screen because there's some valuable information over there, but it looks like Pulse on wow, Wrapped Pulse is up 36% on the 24-hour. So all these numbers that I'm reading out are the 24-hour. We've got Hedron up 47%, P-Hex is up 57%, E-Hex 61%, Icosa 50%, Incentive 80%. The RH tickers are up pretty damn good right now. Pulse X up 69%. This is a good day. This is a good day. And it's great because like everything else is down. You know, Bitcoin is down, Ethereum's down, Solana's down, and it's like, ha! I love it when the Richard Hart ecosystem pumps and everything else is dumping. It makes me feel good. But you know, there will be a time later when everything else will pump and we will not be. So that's always fun. But yes, you're absolutely right. Bringing it back to Fast Abdul. Victory is his. Zenith, can you elaborate a little bit on what he was streaming about earlier?
He was just streaming about the news. Everybody in the community right now is kind of taking a victory lap. Fast Abdul was doing it. I saw Crypto Coffee was doing it. And I also caught Cabana Crypto. Our good friend, Nuclear Herbs, was on with them. So, of course, I caught that stream. And our two crypto rich dads, Charlie and Miguel, are even streaming right now about it, I think. So they've been going for about an hour, I want to say. But yeah, dude, the Hexico is taking a victory lap right now. And just what's fun is everyone's coming back. So even on the streams I was seeing earlier today, it was a bunch of people that were like climbing out of the woodwork. We're like, what? Richard Hart news? What? And we're like, where you been? But at the same time, it's like, glad to see you again.
The people that go to sleep during the bear market or when the price is down. It's interesting how many people come back when there's good news to be shared. You know, fuck, I don't know. I shouldn't judge. I might be them the next cycle. I might just slip away in the woodworks, but I don't know. We always got book club. If there's never cool things to talk about, we could always be streaming on book club. This today, though, this beats out book club by a good little bit.
Well, it's a book club of sorts, considering you and I are doing a sequel to our original legal episode where we literally read the court documents. So not to bury the lead, but that is what we'll be doing today. And it's only 31 pages, so don't worry. It's actually not too long today.
Yep. I'm going to bring... Oh, I didn't mean to share it right now. Good gravy. Remove. There we go. Oh, son of a bitch. It's done the camera thing. There we go. All right, I'm still getting used to production. We got to run through chat shoutouts, though, so good to see you, Mr. Fast Abdul. Let's see who is next. We've got Falcon Crypto next. Hi, dudes. Zenith, where did you purchase that hat from?
This beauty. This was actually a gift from RH Max. I had a chance to hang out with him in person, and he was super cool and gave me some sweet swag, and I figured I would bring it out. Yeah, this one is actually super cool. He gave me two of them. So we got Pulse Chain on the front, Pulse X on the side, Hex on the other side, Pulse Chain on the back, and the brim, Pulse Chain colors, and even on the inside, it's got the Pulse Chain stitching.
That's
dude,
bro.
This thing's sweet. I'm not gonna lie.
That's slick. I like that. I kind of wish I liked flat brim hats more, but that thing's fucking stoked. That's pretty cool. I fucking love it. So you guys can get these hats from, I suppose, RH Max, or there's probably someone who vends them. I'm sure that RH Max gets them from somewhere. So hit him up.
I'm sure he does.
Hit him up, and that's where you can find him. Next up in the chat shoutouts, we've got Crypto Compassion, Pulse Chain for the win. Yes, it's crazy what happens once we start seeing these green candles. So that's pretty fucking. I am happy to be here. It's gonna be a good time. Next up, we've got Psycho Crypto 023. Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you, Mr. Psycho Crypto. Good morning to you too, sir. After that, Paul Sachs. Will is a fire tender, one that spreads fire like a water tender. Good to see you, bros. Yes. Oh, he's asking, is a fire tender one that spreads fire? A fire tender is one that tends to the fire, just like a chicken tender is one who tends to their chickens. So there you go.
Boo. Boo.
Yes. I am tending to the campfire stories. That is this super cool Richard Hart ecosystem stuff going on. Next up in the chat shoutouts, we've got Luna C Point. Hey gang, what's up, Luna? It's good to see you, amiga. Welcome, welcome. After that, oh yeah, Farmer Brown, I'm going to see you guys in Vegas next week. That is correct. I'm going to be leaving Washington State here on Sunday morning. So I've had a super full schedule the whole time I've been up here, so it's been great. But it's time to go down to Vegas and stop down in Oregon and hang out with some crypto amigos down there, and then go down and do a little bit of degeneracy, a little bit of sneaky stuff that stays in Vegas. So that's going to be pretty cool and pretty fun. Next up, we've got Mr. Large. Let's fucking go. What's up, Degens? What's up to you too, sir? Mr. Large, I love to see you, buddy. Welcome, welcome to the stream. This is going to be a good one. And I love that. I love your little icon, by the way, the stormtrooper with the bloody smear mark. Excellent. Oh man, they tried to slip it in like Bill Cosby after a few pills.
That's
Well,
a
it is
reference.
the government. It is the government. So I'm not entirely surprised, but it's, like it's got to be, the news has to be delivered on one of the days that exists, and Friday just so happens to be the day that it was. So it's good to see it. I'm
True.
happy. Next up in the chat shoutouts, we've got Johnny Chaos. Not impressed, ridiculously undervalued. Yes, thank you, sir. I think that these core coin prices are pretty damn undervalued, but it's good to see, it's good to see the cars start to drive up the ramp before they totally fucking take off. And a nice little 50% swing is pretty cool to see. We'll
bad.
see if there's some pullbacks and some sell-offs. If there's a little bit of weak hands, lettuce hands, it comes with these nice big old green giants. And then we'll move forward and we'll see what comes after that. But it's good to see you, Johnny. Welcome to the stream, broski. Glad to have you here with us. I hope you enjoy this memorandum order reading that we do. Next up in the chat shadows, we've got Mr. Beyond All. Hey, Degens. Hey, Degens. What a day to be alive. Hey,
Them Degens.
These damn Degens down here in Louisiana. Hey, Degens. What a day to be alive. Yes, you're absolutely right, Mr. Beyond All. I am stoked. Doing some shooting, going straight into some streaming. I don't have to cover a book that didn't particularly impress me, but we get this fucking kick-ass book of a legal document instead. And apparently the floor is lava, so let's check that one out. Next up in the chat shoutouts, we've got Cassie Kelly. Let's fucking go. Absolutely right, Cassie Kelly. We're gonna fucking go and get out of here. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome. After that, we've got Arceus. This is all very late breaking news. Picturing you all running out of the courtroom to a bank of payphones like reporters from in the 1945s.
It's pretty accurate.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. Yeah, it's pretty late breaking news. This definitely came out, several hours ago. But hey, it's happening right now. So here we are. We're watching it. We're doing it. It's going. It's happening. And yes, Cassie Kelly is absolutely right. Reading the R.H. Cates totally counts as a book. Yep, this is fucking book club. We are here reading. We're having a great time. This is super awesome. Oh man, the chats just keep pouring in. I fucking love you guys.
You guys are killing us.
Great.
We're trying to get to this thing, but everyone just is hanging out. So can't complain about that.
Yep, we're gonna get to it, and then as soon as we close off and start reading, we'll read for a while, and then we'll do the chat shoutouts at the end of the reading and whatnot. But next up, we've got Mr. Chad Donnerschwanz. Hello, fellow based crypto bros and RH respecteurs. It's good to see you, Chad. Welcome, welcome. We got our Pepe on the moon as always. I fucking love that icon. Johnny Chaos back in. Brain Mad Gudger makes those hats. Oh, Brian. Brain Mad Gudger or Brian Mad Gudger. One of the two. Something like that. But yes, Brain Mad Gudger. So check them out. Google them up. See if you guys can find those Pulse Chain hats. That'd be kick ass. Crypto Compassion. Come see me in Oregon before we go to Vegas. I've got like a very stacked schedule, Mr. Crypto Compassion, but I'll hit you up in the DMs and see if you are on the way to the other Oregon Degen that I gotta go visit. I'm not promising anything, but I am interested. You've got my interest peaked. Let's see. We got Tin Top. Also, Mr. Tin Top has joined us, our favorite Mandalorian. What's up, Hexicans? What's up, Mr. Tin Top? It's good to see you, amigo. And then we have our favorite doctor in the space. We've got, or one of our favorite doctors. There's actually, man, there's quite a few.
We got doctor friends, man.
Dude, we do got doctor friends. There's Dr. H, there's Dr. Chen, there's all sorts of doctors. But my favorite doctor as of right now, because I've already said it, so I'm sticking fucking to it. Sorry, all the other doctors, but Dr. Alan Chen, your health unplugged. Life is good. Enjoyed the stream on Wednesday. Yes, shout out to Dr. Chen. We had a fantastic stream on Wednesday, and he's going to be posting that on his channel, the same stream that we did, but he's going to have timestamps, and he might have clips and some cool, awesome things. So that'll be freaking great. Go check it out on his channel, Your Health Unplugged, on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all those good things, and Unplugged MD on Instagram. So good to see you, Dr. Alan Chen. Welcome to the stream. Holy fuck, guys. We got 94 people watching. This is blowing my mind.
Oh,
good
wow.
to see you all. All right. Let's see. Next up in the chat shoutouts. Oh, and finally, we've got Mr. Jonathan, the man whose birthday it was not too terribly long ago. Are we rich yet? Welcome, Jonathan. We are rich. We're rich in friendship. We're rich in time. We're rich in health. And we're rich enough that you can just close your eyes and buy. And so it's going to be a good time. They bought a couple steaks to celebrate. That's the perfect way for us to close out the chat shoutouts. It's good to see everybody over here. Nice to know that Jonathan's over here eating steaks. I think my dad's got some cow tongue preparing right now, or maybe some other delicious beef going on. But we've been doing the carnivore thing here up in Washington. It's been a hell of a cool time. Oh my goodness. There's one more chat that just rolled in. Daddy Hexler, new chapter, turn the page. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to turn this page right on over to page number 1, which is the introduction. I got to change the background here. So let me click on media assets. We'll go over to background. There we go. We got the background. All right. So if I pull this sideways, I can do that. And then I will control plus. Hey, look at that. We got technology, everybody. All right. So, Mr. Zenith, shall I start reading off, or would you like to start reading? How we want to?
I'll start it off.
Okie dokie. Go ahead. I've been talking.
I've read it before this, so I am familiar with how she flows.
Okay.
And
sweet.
then
You just tell me when to jump in.
Will do. All right, folks, quick reminder. This is the motion to dismiss that came out today. This is from the Second Circuit Court in New York City. This is from Judge Carol Amon. I know we were talking a lot how we were expecting 60 to 90 days for the motion to dismiss to be granted or denied. We're a few days past that, but better late than never. And if anything, I sent Nuclear Herbs a good news, bad news message today. I said, hey, great news is we won. Bad news is all that prep I did for the Vegas talk we were going to give is now out the window. But that's a good thing. That's a good problem to have. So we got 31 pages here. It's got a little bit of an introduction, some background history. The background history we will go through because if you have been paying attention or you listened to the last time that Will and I read the documents, you will notice that the timeline actually sounds more correct. And that's because it has been corrected thanks to the oral arguments in New York City. Outside of that, we're going to get into the legal analysis that we have 2 main sections. Section number 1 is going to be jurisdiction, and section number 2 is going to be the fraud claims, or rather, it's going to be the application of securities laws, where they talked about a domestic offering of a security, and then a fraud in relation to that, because the SEC made the argument that the SAC funds were investor funds, therefore Richard Hart had an obligation to do things with them specifically, but as we see, this whole thing, the motion to dismiss was granted. It was not partially granted. It was entirely granted. There is a section at the bottom. There's a bit of a caveat or an asterisk, but we will get to that when we get there. Other than that, though, Will, I have it up on my own screen. So if you can just follow along with me, I will go at my pace and then you can do the scrolling. How's that sound?
Yes, sir. That's perfect.
Excellent. Folks at home, if you guys have any questions comments, questions, or thoughts while we're reading this thing, go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll hit them up afterwards. As of right now, our goal is we want to do it just from the top all the way to the bottom, get through it so that theoretically anyone watching this on replay, gang, can watch it at multiple speed faster if they so desire, because let's be real, these are court documents, and I understand it's kind of dry, but we'll do the best that we can to spice it up a little bit for you. So, with that being said,
doing these at all?
I am not planning on doing the footnotes.
Okay. All right.
Alrighty, so here we go. U.S. District Court, Eastern District of New York, SEC Commission, plaintiff against Richard Schuler, a.k.a. Richard Hart, Hex, Pulsechain, and Pulsex. Defendants, Amon, Judge, Introduction. The plaintiff, SEC, brought this action against defendant Richard Hart, Hex, PulseChain, and PulseX. The SEC alleges that Hart violated the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, the Exchange Act, and the Securities Act, respectively, by promoting, offering, and selling unregistered crypto asset securities and defrauding investors by misappropriating investor funds. Pursuant to Rules 12b-2 and 12b-6 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Hart moves to dismiss all claims, both for lack of personal jurisdiction and for failure to state a claim. For the reasons stated below, the motion to dismiss is granted. Background. The following facts are taken from the complaint and are assumed true for the purposes of this motion. I draw all reasonable inferences in the SEC's favor. Hart is a United States citizen currently residing in Finland. He is the founder of Hex, PulseChain, and PulseX, each alleged to be a crypto asset security, collectively Hart's crypto assets. 1. The offer period. Hex. From December 9th, 2019 to November 19th, 2020, Hart offered and sold Hex tokens to investors, some of whom resided in the United States, in exchange for Ethereum. The Hex offer period is what this is coined as. Hex is an ERC token, which is a technical standard that defines how fungible tokens operate on the Ethereum blockchain. Hart designed Hex to operate on Ethereum as a smart contract. The Hex offering and communications occurred globally through social media and Hart's websites. To facilitate the Hex offering, Hart created several digital wallet addresses, which he allegedly owns and controls. Hart created a digital wallet address on the Ethereum blockchain known as the Hex contract address, or HEX-CA, and a separate private wallet known as the Hex flush address, which was programmed directly into Hex's code before he sold any Hex tokens. Investors sent Ethereum to the Hex contract address and received Hex tokens in return. The Ethereum and the Hex contract address would then be automatically transferred or flushed to the Hex flush address. According to the SEC, after investors' Ethereum transferred into the Hex flush address, it was sent through a series of transactions known as recycling, involving intermediary digital wallet addresses on crypto asset trading platforms before eventually being sent back into the Hex contract address. The holders of the digital wallet addresses perpetuating the recycling transactions would receive additional Hex for each transaction. During its investigation, the SEC discovered that approximately 94 to 97% of the Ethereum deposited in the Hex-CA went through this recycling process. The SEC alleges that Hart created a false appearance of significant organic demand for Hex tokens when, in reality, the majority of these transactions were recycling transactions that let Hart gain control over a large number of Hex tokens. During the Hex offer period, Hart marketed and promoted Hex using several online and social media platforms, including Twitter, YouTube live streams, and the Hex.com website. For example, Hart marketed Hex's staking feature, frequently referring to Hex as the first high-yield blockchain certificate of deposit on Ethereum. Staking allows investors to lock up their Hex tokens for a designated period in exchange for additional Hex tokens as a return on their investment. Hart likened staking to conventional interest payments, claiming that investors would receive an average investment return of 38%. Hart also explained that the staking protocol benefited everyone who held Hex tokens because when people lock up their Hex coins, that would cause the price to go up and the market cap to go down, allowing investors to keep building appreciations and mad gains. The complaint further alleges that Hart touted Hex's capacity for profitability, claiming to investors that if you want to get rich, Hex is built for that, and that Hex was designed to surpass Ethereum and become the highest appreciating asset that has ever existed in the history of man. It also recounts how Hart's efforts to make Hex a success. Hart shared with potential investors how-to videos describing how investors could purchase and stake their Hex tokens. Hart promised investors he would personally call crypto asset trading platforms to get Hex listed. Hart sent private Twitter messages to a crypto asset trading platform, which subsequently listed Hex on his platform in December of 2019. Hart further claimed to investors that almost all of his time was going towards developing the Hex ecosystem. 2 U.S. investors invested in Hex after learning about Hex through Hart's online activities. Hart also used incentives to attract investors. He promoted a rewards program called the Big Payday that rewarded investors who staked their Hex tokens with bonus payments of unclaimed Hex tokens. Hart also orchestrated 2 separate airdrops to generate additional investor interest in Hex. He identified significant holders of both Bitcoin and Ethereum and directed his developers to deposit Hex tokens into holders' digital wallets. The alleged purpose of these airdrops was to increase market awareness for Hex. Ultimately, the Hex offering received at least 2,371 2,371,362 Ethereum deposits from 21,000 identifiable digital wallet addresses, including deposits from 10 U.S. investors. Item B, Pulse Chain. From July 15th, 2021 to August 3rd, 2021, Hart coordinated an offering to raise investor funds to allegedly develop Pulse Chain, the Pulse Chain offer period. The SEC alleges that the Pulse Chain offer period was unofficially extended to April 6th of 2022. Pulse Chain is a hard fork of the Ethereum blockchain with its own native token Pulse. The primary purpose of Pulse Chain was to run faster with cheaper gas fees than Ethereum. To participate in the Pulse Chain offering, investors deposited or sacrificed crypto assets, including Ethereum, into a digital wallet address, the Pulse Chain SA. In exchange, Pulse Chain investors ultimately received Pulse tokens in May of 2023 when Pulse Chain launched. During the Pulse Chain offer period, Hart promoted and marketed Pulse Chain through his websites and social media. For example, Hart touted that the expected profits for potential Pulse Chain investors, claiming that 14,000x is a reasonable estimate for what could be possible for Pulse. Hart also emphasized his efforts to develop Pulse Chain. On YouTube Live, Hart described his progress to get Pulse Chain ready for the launch. Ultimately, the Pulse Chain offering collected crypto asset deposits worth over $354 million, including deposits from at least 10 U.S. investors. There it is again, 10 U.S. investors. Keep that in mind. Item C, Pulse X. From December 29th, 2021 to February 26th, 2022, Hart coordinated an offering to raise investor funds to allegedly develop Pulse X, the Pulse X offer period. The SEC alleges that the Pulse X offer period, like the Pulse Chain offer period, was also unofficially extended until April 6, 2022. Hart developed Pulse X and its native token, Pulse X, around the same time as Pulse Chain. Pulse X is a decentralized protocol on Ethereum blockchain that acts as Pulse Chain's decentralized crypto asset trading platform through a fork of the Uniswap platform. To participate in the Pulse X offering, investors similarly deposited or sacrificed crypto assets to a Pulse X wallet address, the Pulse X SA. In exchange, investors ultimately received Pulse X in May of 2023 when Pulse X launched. During the Pulse X offer period, Hart promoted and marketed Pulse X through his websites and social media. Hart claimed Pulse X was the coolest, high liquidity, automated market maker exchange, and that it was well within the realm of possibility that Pulse X would appreciate around 10,000x in 2 years. According to the SEC, Hart tied the launch of Pulse X and Pulse Chain to an increase in profits for investors in Hart's crypto assets. Hart explained that when an investor deposits Hex tokens during the Pulse X offer period, hundreds of millions of dollars in Hex tokens are removed from the supply. With this reduced supply of Hex tokens in circulation, Hart claimed that Hex tokens would appreciate and be more valuable on Pulse than Ethereum. Ultimately, the Pulse X offering received crypto asset deposits worth over $676 million, including deposits from, again, at least 10 U.S. investors. Number 2, the post-offer period statements. After the Hex offer period, Hart continued to market and promote Hex to allegedly drive Hex's demand on the secondary market. Hex's websites published statements that claiming that Hex appreciated faster than anything else, and that Hex's primary design intention is price appreciation. Hart also directed potential investors to visit his website, ethhex.com, which allowed investors to transact in secondary market purchases directly through Uniswap. Hart also made 2 virtual appearances before audiences in the United States. In the SEC's view, Hart continued to promote Hex, Pulse Chain, and Pulse X during these appearances. Hart appeared at a conference known as the Hex Conference in March of 2022 and a conference known as PulseCon in September of 2022. During these appearances, Hart touted Hex's giant volume on decentralized exchanges and that he wouldn't be surprised if at some point Hex started doing the same things that it used to do, which is just outperforming like crazy. On August 15, 2022, Hart also appeared in person for a live podcast interview in Miami, Florida, where he discussed Hex, Pulse Chain, and Pulse X. This is the Miami interview. He again bragged about Hex's performance, claiming Hex produced 10,000x returns in 2 years. Pulse Chain and Pulse X. After the Pulse Chain and Pulse X offer periods, Hart continued to market and promote Pulse Chain and Pulse X. He stated at PulseCon that his developers are geniuses. They find bugs other people's don't, and that before we launch, we want everything to be right. These statements are alleged to have led investors to believe that if Hart and his developers did not complete Pulse Chain's development, the value of their investment would collapse. Hart also stated that because Pulse Chain is going to launch at 0, it's pretty hard to beat the ROI of something that goes from 0 to anything. It's like infinite ROI. Based on Hart's statements, one Brooklyn investor believed that his deposits were being used to develop Pulse Chain and that Pulse tokens would increase in value. Regarding PulseX, Hart, through a Telegram chat, described how PulseX functioned to one potential U.S. investor. Hart provided the investor with step-by-step instructions on how to purchase crypto assets and how to transfer them to Pulse Chain and swap on PulseX. Further, on YouTube Live, when asked about an update on the launch of Pulse Chain and PulseX, Hart replied that it is done when it is done. Software is hard. The developers are working hard on it. That's all there is to it. Number 3, Pulse Chain fraud allegations. The SEC further alleges that Hart defrauded Pulse Chain investors and engaged in deceptive conduct. From August 3rd, 2021 through September 22nd, 2022, the SEC alleges that Hart misappropriated $12.1 million of Pulse Chain investor deposits to luxury items, including cars, watches, and diamonds. To disguise these transactions, Pulse Chain deposits were first transferred to Hart's private wallet and then transferred through a series of mixer transactions before ending up on 3 crypto asset platforms. According to the complaint, these mixer transactions ultimately benefited Hart through his personal purchases. Hart never disclosed to investors that their deposits would be used to fund such purchases. Item number 4, complaint's cause of action. Based upon these allegations, the SEC asserts 2 basic claims for relief against Hart. First, it alleges that Hart violated Section 5 of the Securities Act by failing to register the offer and sale of Hart's crypto assets as required by securities laws. Second, it alleges that Hart violated the anti-fraud provisions of the federal securities laws with respect to the offer and sale of his crypto asset, Pulse Chain. All right, here we go. Standard review. This is where we get into the meat and potatoes of the arguments going on here.
So to be clear, that was all the allegation with the assumption that the SEC is correct.
Correct. That is under the assumption that the SEC is correct. From this point forward, the judge is going to start looking into the actual rules and the standards and then start talking out loud and walking through the logical train of thought and the evaluation and ultimately the result. So let's get after it.
All right.
Standard of review, Rule 12B2. To defeat a motion to dismiss for lack of personal jurisdiction, the plaintiff need only make a prima facie showing that jurisdiction exists. That pretty much just means on its face, effectively. Like just very high level stuff. Hoffritz for Cutlery Incorporated versus Amajak. Under this standard, a plaintiff must plead facts which, if true, are sufficient in themselves to establish jurisdiction as to each defendant and to each claim asserted. So we have to go each defendant and each claim. A plaintiff can make this showing through his own affidavits and supporting materials containing an averment of facts that, if credited, would suffice to establish jurisdiction over the defendant. Further, the plaintiff may make a prima facie showing, notwithstanding a controverting presentation by the moving party, because all pleadings and affidavits are construed in the light most favorable to the plaintiff, and because, where doubt exists, they are resolved in the plaintiff's favor. So that's straight up saying right now, the SEC is the plaintiff, therefore the SEC gets the benefit of the doubt. This causes a high bar. Rule 12B6, Federal Rule of Civil Procedure, provides for dismissal of a complaint that fails to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. To survive dismissal, a complaint must state a claim that is plausible on its face, that's that prima facie statement right there, by alleging sufficient facts for the court to draw the reasonable inference that the defendant is liable for the misconduct alleged. So, there you go again. It's talking about how the SEC kind of has the edge when it comes to these 50-50 toss-ups, so to speak. A court must dismiss a claim if the well-pleaded facts do not permit the court to infer more than the mere possibility of misconduct. Although courts will not credit conclusory statements or threadbare recitals of the elements of a cause of action, the court must accept as true all material allegations and draw all reasonable inferences in the plaintiff's favor. Again, same thing. In considering a motion to dismiss for failure to state a claim pursuant to Rule 12b6, a district court may consider the facts alleged in the complaint, documents attached to the complaint as exhibits, and documents incorporated by reference in the complaint. All right, so there you go. That's the bar. That's the bar we got to clear for the SEC to keep going with this case.
So background information, and then the 2 rules.
Yep, there you go. We set the field goal. Now you got to get through the field goal. All right, discussion. Item number 1, personal jurisdiction. Hart first asserts that the SEC has failed to establish personal jurisdiction as to any of its claims. To establish personal jurisdiction over a defendant, due process requires a plaintiff, the SEC, to allege that the defendant, Hart, has certain minimum contracts with relevant forum, and 2, that the exercise of jurisdiction is reasonable in those circumstances. By the way, when we're talking about relevant forum, they're talking about targeting the United States, so that's what they mean by that. For the purposes of minimum contact analysis, the SEC only asserts that I have specific jurisdiction over Hart. Specific jurisdiction exists when a court exercises personal jurisdiction over a defendant, Richard Hart in this case, in a suit arising out of or related to the defendant's contact with the forum, in this case, the United States. In determining whether specific jurisdiction exists, courts must assess the quality and nature of the defendant's contacts with the forum state under a totality of the circumstances test. The crucial question is whether the defendant has purposefully availed itself of the privilege of conducting activities within the forum state, thus invoking the benefits and protections of its laws, such that the defendant should reasonably anticipate being hauled into court there. Section 77VA of the Securities Act and Section 78AA of the Exchange Act, which together govern all causes of action in the complaint, authorize nationwide service of process, meaning that courts look to contacts with the entire United States rather than within the forum state, when determining whether to exercise personal jurisdiction over defendants. More references. Here we go. In determining which contacts to consider, the guiding principle of the minimum contacts test is whether the suit relates to the defendant's contact with the forum. The SEC must show some sort of causal relation between Hart's U.S. contacts and the episode in suit, and the SEC's claim must in some way arise from Hart's purposeful contacts within the forum. Because the SEC must establish the court's jurisdiction with respect to its unregistered securities claim and the pulse chain fraud claims, I address each set of claims in turn. First up, unregistered securities claims. In support of its unregistered securities claims, the SEC relies on contacts that occurred before, during, and after the offer periods. I will consider Hart's contention that the SEC's alleged post-offer period contacts are not relevant to the inquiry. Post-offer period context. Hart argues that his virtual attendance at the Hex conference, PulseCon, and his in-person appearance at the Miami interview are irrelevant because investors could no longer participate in the alleged offer and sale of Hart's crypto assets. The SEC argues generally that Hart's mix of online plus in-person promotions together were specifically directed at the United States and thus constitute sufficient minimum context, but fail to adequately address the timing issue raised by Hart. Here, the relevant suit-related conduct is the conduct that could have subjected Hart to liability under Section 5A, sale of unregistered securities, and Section 5C, offer of unregistered securities, of the Securities Act for registration violations. Contacts that post-date the offer periods could not subject Hart to liability because investors could no longer purchase Hart's crypto assets pursuant to the offer. For Hex, the offer period closed November of 2020, well before the conference took place. Although Hart did discuss Hex extensively during the Hex conference, it is irrelevant to the offer and sale of unregistered securities because investors could no longer participate in the offer period. The complaint alleges that since the Hex offering closed, Hex investors could only purchase Hex tokens from third parties on platforms such as Uniswap. But Hart is not alleged to have any control or involvement in Uniswap. Regarding PulseChain and PulseX, although the Hex conference took place before the end of the unofficial extended offer periods for both PulseChain and PulseX, nothing was said of significance that related to those offerings. Hart only mentioned PulseChain and PulseX as having a, quote, product market fit with, quote, a lot of traction, a lot of demand, end quote. The Hex conference instead focused on Hex's post-offer performance. Without more, Hart's presence at a virtual conference focused on different post-offering assets is insufficient to establish personal jurisdiction. The remaining alleged contacts, PulseCon and the Miami interview, took place after PulseChain and PulseX offer periods ended. Moreover, there is no allegation that Hart received investor deposits after the Hex, PulseChain, and PulseX offer periods closed. Absent such allegations, Hart's suit-related conduct does not arise out of or relate to his post-offer period contacts. A lot of references there. Here we go. Accordingly, I find that Hart's participation in the virtual conferences and his in-person interview are not relevant contacts that could subject Hart to liability for the alleged offer and sale of Hart's crypto assets. So, that section right there is talking about the timeline that was corrected during the oral arguments. So the judge is pretty much saying that, look, did he go to these conferences and the interview? Yes. But because they're after the SAC periods ended, they're not material to the actual SAC offerings, which is what is in question here. Make sense?
Yep. Looking good.
Alrighty. Section 2, contacts before and during the offer period. For the relevant periods, the SEC relies on Hart's online marketing efforts through social media and his websites. Because this conduct occurred outside of the United States, courts employ the effects test, which permits a court to assert specific personal jurisdiction over a defendant if the defendant expressly aimed its conduct at the forum. Incidental effects or even foreseeable effects are insufficient. Instead, the defendant must have intentionally caused, i.e., expressly aimed to cause, an effect in the forum through his conduct elsewhere. Item 1. Hart's internet contacts. The SEC alleges that Hart extensively marketed Hart's crypto assets on his websites and social media. Hart counters that his online efforts to market and promote Hart's crypto assets were globally available and not expressly directed towards the United States. For the reasons stated below, the remaining suit-related internet contacts, even considered collectively, are insufficient to establish personal jurisdiction. When determining whether to exercise personal jurisdiction over a defendant because of activity on his website, the Second Circuit considers as a relevant factor a website's interactivity in determining whether the defendant, through the website, purposely availed himself of the privilege of conducting activities in the forum. There we go. A website's degree of interactivity exists on a spectrum. At one end of the spectrum are active websites, sites where the defendant clearly does business over the internet because contracts with residents of a foreign jurisdiction through knowing and repeated internet communications. On the other end are passive websites, which do not confer jurisdiction. Passive websites generally do not give users any ability to directly purchase the services through the website. Finally, the middle of the spectrum involves interactive websites which permit the exchange of information between users in another state and the defendant, which, depending on the level and nature of the exchange, may be a basis for jurisdiction. The SEC argues that Hart conducted business over the internet through his websites and through social media campaigns, but the facts as alleged fail to support that position. In making this argument, the SEC relies on my decision, SEC versus PlexCore. This is actually another case that she ruled on previously. But that reliance is misplaced. In PlexCore, the SEC brought suit against the defendants for violation of federal security laws for promoting and selling their crypto asset to a U.S.-based customer. I rejected the defendant's motion to dismiss for lack of personal jurisdiction because the defendants created several significant internet contacts with the United States while promoting their initial coin offering. The defendants used Facebook to directly message about the ICO to US-based customers, respond to questions, and provide links to defendants' websites. The defendants in the PlexCore case also facilitated sales on their website through payment portals, which users could provide their credit card information and purchase the crypto asset. In part because the defendant's website contacts evinced that they clearly did business over the internet at 19. That's a reference. I determined that personal jurisdiction was proper. Here, in the Richard Hart case, unlike the PlexCore case, Hart's website contacts were not active. The complaint fails to allege that Hart facilitated transactions, collected credit card information, or entered into contracts with US-based investors through his websites. Therefore, Hart did not clearly do business over his websites, nor do Hart's websites contacts fall towards the middle of the spectrum. The complaint alleges that Hart provided information via YouTube and on his website on how users could invest in Hart's crypto assets. However, Hart did not directly message US-based investors or respond to questions through his websites. Rather, Hart disseminated how-to information, which alone is not sufficient. Hart's website contacts instead fall closer to the passive end of the Zippo spectrum. As alleged, Hart's websites included clickable tabs that provided information on how to purchase the crypto assets, but simply posting information on an internet website, which is accessible to users in foreign jurisdictions, is not grounds for the exercise of personal jurisdiction. A lot of references there. All right, end of the paragraph. Accordingly, Hart's website contacts simply provided globally available information and lack sufficient interactivity to constitute a significant contact. Hart's social media statements fare no better. Hart claimed on YouTube that Hex was built to outperform Ethereum and Bitcoin and all other cryptocurrencies. But such statements are not alleged to be expressly targeted at the United States, any more than at other forums. Next page. In sum, the relevant online communications described in the complaint during the offer periods consist of untargeted, globally available information. The SEC failed to plead sufficient facts to suggest that Hart's online statements were purposely directed to the forum, the United States, rather than a global audience. All right, quick summary on this one. So the PlexCore case was talking about how if you have a website that does stuff like message people in the United States, take credit card payments, actively create contracts, that's the kind of stuff that allows you to be targeting a specific jurisdiction. Because the Hex.com website and the PulseChain and PulseX websites did none of that stuff, they just gave you information on what to do. It falls towards that passive side of the spectrum. Therefore, it's not directed at the United States, and it's just globally available information. Make sense?
Yep.
Alrighty. On to
less, it was aggressive with PlexCore. It was just extant with Hart.
Correct. It's being specific versus just like very, very generic. All right, number 2, US-based developer. The SEC argues half-heartedly that Hart's involvement with Bar, a software developer, to develop Hart's crypto assets constitutes purposeful conduct directed at the United States. For the reasons discussed below, Bar's involvement with Hart falls short of what is necessary to exercise personal jurisdiction over Hart. First, there is no allegation that Bar was in the United States while he worked for Hart. The affidavit says that only that Bar currently lives in the United States. Even if Bar were in the United States, he was not an employee of Hart. Instead, he was only a volunteer, and his activities were purely incidental to his presence in the forum. Oh, wow. Further,
bottom of the page.
Yep, thank you. Further, Bar's activities are not alleged to relate to efforts to market and promote the alleged securities at issue. Because Hart did not engage in substantial suit-related conduct in or directed at the United States in connection with the offer and sale of Hart's crypto assets, I find that Hart does not have sufficient contacts with the United States for specific jurisdiction. Since I conclude that minimum contacts are lacking, I need not determine whether exercising personal jurisdiction over Hart for the unregistered security claims would satisfy the Fifth Amendment's reasonableness requirement. There you go. All right. So they're saying that the developer in this case, that's also not targeting the U.S. It's just like the guy, it's just immaterial. It doesn't matter. And if anything, the guy was a volunteer. All right. PulseChain fraud claims. I further find that there is no personal jurisdiction over Hart for the PulseChain fraud claims, as discussed above, because the relevant conduct for Hart's alleged fraudulent conduct occurred entirely out of the forum. The Second Circuit relies on the effects test. Pursuant to the effects test, personal jurisdiction is proper if Hart expressly aimed his conduct at the forum. The SEC fails to meet this test. The SEC's allegations of Hart's misuse of investor funds and material omissions all occurred abroad. Hart's alleged deceptive acts include misappropriating investor funds between August 2021 and September of 2022, and using devices to conceal the funds' movement. To the extent the complaint shows that Hart misappropriated investor funds through deceptive mixer transactions, those actions occurred entirely outside of the United States. The alleged misappropriation occurred through digital wallets and crypto asset platforms, none of which were alleged to have any connection with the United States. The SEC alleges that Hart's material omissions, including telling investors about PulseChain's development progress and their investments supported free speech ideals, while failing to disclose his luxury purchases. As an initial matter, Although the timeline for the pulse chain fraud claims encompasses Hart's attendance at the virtual conferences and his in-person interview in Miami, the SEC does not allege that these events relate in any way to the conduct underlying the fraud claims. What remains are online statements wherein Hart allegedly spoke about the use of pulse chain investor funds to develop the blockchain. As discussed above, globally available internet content not expressly directed at the United States is insufficient to establish minimum contacts. Accordingly, a focus on the relationship of Hart, the forum, and Hart's suit-related conduct points to the conclusion that there is no specific personal jurisdiction over Hart for the pulse chain fraud claims in this case. Alrighty, so that's jurisdiction. That part right there says that if you want to try to apply fraud, you have to have jurisdiction. Because there's no jurisdiction, you cannot pursue fraud.
Yep.
Alrighty. Item number 2, application of the United States securities laws. Even if the SEC had established personal jurisdiction over Hart, the complaint cannot stand because it fails to adequately plead that either the transactions or conduct at issue were domestic under the federal securities laws. Section 5A, Sales of Securities Claim. It is a long-standing principle in American law that legislation of Congress, unless a contrary intent appears, is meant to apply only within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. The SEC alleges that Hart sold securities without filing a registration statement in violation of 15 U.S.C. 77EA. In the case Morrison, the court determined that the Exchange Act applied to 1. Securities listed on domestic exchanges and 2. Domestic transactions in other securities. Morrison, 561 U.S. at 267. A plaintiff, therefore, must show that the transactions at issue were either listed on domestic exchanges or that the purchase or sale occurred in the United States. Hart's crypto assets did not trade on domestic exchanges. Thus, the relevant inquiry is limited to the second prong, whether the SEC has alleged domestic transactions in crypto assets. To establish the existence of a domestic securities transaction in securities not listed on a domestic exchange, a plaintiff must allege facts suggesting that irrevocable liability was incurred or title was transferred within the United States. Irrevocable liability can be used to determine the locus of a securities purchase or sale, i.e., location. Parties may become irrevocably bound if there was a meeting of the minds, factual allegations including but not limited to facts concerning the formation of the contracts, the placement of purchase orders, the passing of title, or the exchange of money in the United States may be sufficient to show that parties become irrevocably bound within the United States. But merely asserting in conclusory fashion that transactions took place in the United States is insufficient to adequately plead the existence of a domestic transaction. Richard Hart contends that the federal securities laws do not apply to the sale of Hart's crypto assets because the complaint merely alleges that an unspecified number of U.S.-based investors participated in the offerings. The SEC argues that irrevocable liability attached when U.S.-based investors deposited crypto assets into digital wallets located on the blockchain in exchange for Hart's crypto assets. In support of its position, the SEC relies on the Second Circuit's recent decision in Williams versus Binance, which addressed the extraterritorial application of securities laws under the Morrison case to transactions in crypto assets. In Williams, the court held that the plaintiffs had plausibly alleged that their securities laws claims involved domestic transactions for the purposes of Morrison. The plaintiffs were U.S.-based purchasers of crypto assets on defendant Binance's digital asset exchange. The plaintiffs alleged that while the United States, they registered accounts with Binance, accepted Binance's terms of use, and placed orders which were matched on Binance's servers, the majority of which were in the United States. Pursuant to the terms of use, once the traders were matched, they could not be canceled. Further, Binance disclaimed having any physical location or being subject to any country's securities regulation regime. Binance did, however, have a substantial presence with servers, employees, and customers throughout the United States. The court acknowledged that determining where irrevocable liability attaches, it is particularly difficult when a transaction takes place over an exchange that claims to have no physical location in any geographic jurisdiction and not be subject to the oversight of any country's regulatory authority. Despite this difficulty, the court noted that transactions on such a digital exchange cannot occur nowhere. The court determined that 2 transactional steps gave rise to inference that irrevocable liability occurred in the United States. Under the first transactional step, the court found it was appropriate to determine where matching occurred solely based on the location of the servers, because Binance had not registered in any country, purported to have no physical location or official location whatsoever, and the authorities in Malta, where its nominal headquarters are located, disclaimed responsibility for regulating Binance. The court distinguished cases involving trades executed over a foreign exchange because the application of U.S. securities law here does not risk incompatibility with the applicable laws of the other countries. The court held that the first transactional step occurred when the transactions at issue were matched and therefore became irrevocable on servers located in the United States. The court next determined that the transactions were domestic for a second interrelated reason. The court explained that in the context of transactions not on a foreign exchange, our cases look to the facts concerning the formation of the contracts, the placement of the purchase orders, the passing of the title, or the exchange of money to determine when and where an investor becomes irrevocably bound to complete a transaction. In considering these facts, the court concluded that irrevocable liability attached when the plaintiffs entered into the terms of use with Binance and placed their trade orders and sent payments, all of which they claim occurred from their home states within the United States. In a prior case, the Second Circuit held that the mere placement of a buy order in the United States for the purchase of a foreign securities on a foreign exchange was not standing alone sufficient to allege that a purchaser incurred irrevocable liability in the United States. The Williams case court distinguished City of Pontiac because the plaintiffs in Williams made domestic payments pursuant to Binance's terms of use, which rendered their agreements to purchase crypto assets binding, and because of the lack of sovereignty and committee concerns where no country claimed its regulatory regime applied. Here, in the Richard Hart case, unlike the Williams case, the complaint fails to allege that investors' deposits were matched on U.S. servers, nor does the complaint allege that the deposits were first validated on the blockchain in the United States.
Where
Thus,
does
the complaint
blockchain live?
Where does the blockchain live? Thus, the complaint fails to satisfy the first traditional step under Williams.
Transactional.
Transactional, thank you. The SEC interprets Williams' case, however, to stand for the proposition that sending buy orders and payments from the United States is a second separate basis to establish irrevocable liability. Therefore, under this standalone basis, irrevocable liability occurred in the United States when U.S.-based investors deposited crypto assets into digital wallets on the blockchain. In response, Hart argues that the Second Circuit expressly observed that placing purchase orders from the United States was only a second interrelated reason to find that irrevocable liability attached inside the United States. Whether it is or is not an independent basis to show that the parties became irrevocably bound within the United States, there are insufficient allegations to apply this basis. First, the Second Circuit specifically expressed that we have reason here to consider where the trades originated because Binance expressly disclaimed having any physical location, and therefore the sovereignty and committee concerns are less present. Here in this case, Hart made no such disclaimers. Rather, the complaint alleges that Hart is a resident of Finland. Unlike Malta's express disclaimer of regulatory responsibility over Binance, Finland is not alleged to have made any such disclaimer. Further, the SEC attempts to assert in conclusory fashion that the transactions took place in the United States. The investors did not enter into terms of use with Hart. Instead, the SEC relies on allegations that investors deposited crypto assets into digital wallets, including from investors in the United States, which is insufficient. Courts have required far more U.S.-centric allegations to show that crypto asset transactions at issue were sufficiently domestic. In Barron versus Helbiz, the court found that the alleged transactions were domestic because the digital wallets that generated crypto assets for U.S.-based investors were controlled by a U.S. resident and operated out of the United States, and the defendants were in the United States when they sold their own crypto asset to the public. In Retezos SEC litigation, the court determined that the alleged transactions were domestic because users participated in transactions from the United States through an interactive website hosted in the United States and operated by a U.S. resident. And the transaction was validated by a network of global nodes clustered more densely in the United States than in any other country. Here in the Richard Hart case, no similar allegations are present. Instead, the SEC's allegations fall short of adequately pleading a domestic transaction. I acknowledge that the Second Circuit's concern that transactions on a digital exchange cannot occur nowhere, but as alleged, I cannot reasonably infer that these transactions occurred in the United States. Accordingly, the SEC has failed to adequately allege domestic transactions for its Section 5A claims. All right, summary for that one is they're trying to claim that things happen in the United States, but the SEC does not provide enough evidence that enough things happen in the United States to claim jurisdiction. And notably, the Binance case was used as comparison, but Binance tried pulling the I exist nowhere, I operate under no laws, but then the US was like, that's kind of crap. You operate somewhere, so we're just going to assume control over you because you do things in the United States.
It's like maritime law.
Exactly. The difference with this one is that because Richard Hart does claim Finland residency and Finland does have their own securities laws, the US can't just reach their laws into another country with existing laws of their own. That's pretty much the argument here, and that's why this works.
Was it that Richard Hart claimed Finland residency, or was it that the SEC alleged Richard Hart has Finland residency?
Can't remember. I think Richard Hart claimed Finland residency, at least in the motions to dismiss he does.
Okay, cool.
All right, almost there, folks. Promise. We're at page 28, I think.
Doing excellent.
Section 5C, offers of securities claims. Section 5C prohibits offering a security without a registration statement. 15 U.S.C. 77 EC. The parties disagree about what test I should apply to determine whether Hart's alleged offer of Hart's crypto assets without a registration statement was domestic. Richard Hart argues that the relevant consideration is the location of the offerer. The SEC claims that the SEC claims that it is what the offerees heard while in the United States that should control, and because Hart engaged in conduct, albeit abroad, that targeted U.S. investors, there is sufficient domestic conduct to apply U.S. securities laws. Courts in the district have determined that for an offer to be domestic under the Securities Act, a person or entity must 1. Attempt or offer in the United States to dispose of securities, or 2. Solicit in the United States an offer to buy securities. Here, the complaint does not allege that Hart attempted to offer securities during the relevant offer periods while in the United States. Accordingly, I find that the SEC has failed to show that Hart made domestic offers of Hart's crypto assets. Section C, pulse chain fraud claims. The SEC asserts its pulse chain fraud claims under Section 10B of the Exchange Act and under Section 17A of the Securities Act. The parties dispute which test governs these claims. The SEC argues that Congress, through the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, overrode Morrison's transactional test and reinstated the previously applied conduct and effects test for SEC anti-fraud actions. Richard Hart argues that Morrison's transactional test governed because Dodd-Frank's plain language does not rebut the presumption against extraterritoriality and because the Second Circuit explicitly questioned of the impact of Dodd-Frank on the Morrison case. I need not determine which test should govern because the SEC has failed to state a claim for its pulse chain fraud claims under either inquiry. Under Morrison, the SEC, again, that's something right there. We'll go back on that. Under Morrison, the SEC again fails to sufficiently allege that participants in the pulse chain offering became irrevocably bound in the United States. As discussed above, allegations that crypto assets were deposited into digital wallets on the blockchain by an unknown number of U.S. investors is insufficient. To satisfy the conduct and effects test, the SEC must show 1. Conduct within the United States that constitutes significant steps in furtherance of violation, or 2. Conduct occurring outside the United States that has a foreseeable, substantial effect within the United States. Here, the SEC fails to allege sufficient facts that place Hart's conduct within the United States. For example, the SEC alleges that Hart discussed the benefits of PulseChain, its profit potential, and his development efforts on PulseChain's website and YouTube. Notably, the complaint fails to allege that this conduct was directed at the United States. Instead, it merely alleges that this conduct originated abroad through online activities. As such, I cannot reasonably infer that Richard Hart's conduct was conduct within the United States. The SEC also fails to satisfy the effects test. The complaint alleges that some investors in the U.S. deposited crypto assets during the PulseChain offer period. This fails to show that the alleged fraud had a substantial effect in the United States. More references.
Man.
I know. For the reasons above, I find that the SEC has failed to state a claim for its PulseChain fraud claims. Final section number 3, leave to amend. The SEC asked that should I grant Richard Hart's motion, I grant the SEC leave to amend the complaint. The court should freely give leave to amend when justice so requires. This is a liberal and permissive standard that is consistent with our strong preference for resolving disputes on the merits. If the SEC believes in good faith that it can amend the complaint to remedy the deficiencies identified herein, any such amended complaint must be filed within 20 days of the date of this order. Conclusion. For the reasons set forth, Richard Hart's motion to dismiss is granted. This day, February 28th, 2025. All right, folks, there you go. 31 pages. Thank you for sticking through the whole thing. We will now be taking questions. Yeah, so what'd you think?
I mean, it's not as awesome as I had hoped. I had hoped it would be either dismissed with prejudice or that the case would be allowed to continue and we'd smoke the SEC in court. But you know, it's not too shabby.
I hear you. This is if you remember back when we covered the Tornado Cash case that was in Texas, where instead of that court looking at like the entirety of the case and trying to figure out the entire thing of every element, figuring it out, what they did was they focused in on one specific section that was overarching to everything else. And because they dismantled the first thing, all of the following items were just invalid because you couldn't get through step 1. That's kind of what happens here, which is that if you remember back in the original motion to dismiss, there were 5 initial things that they talked about. Jurisdiction was number 1, but there were 4 others. First off was domestic offering of sale, which is here. Security. It's not even a security, which they didn't even talk about in this one. Fraud, and then the First Amendment allegations. So we covered fraud in this one, but we notably didn't cover the First Amendment stuff. So because we were in the motion to dismiss, the point was that the SEC had to show at its face that there was a good chance that they were going to be able to succeed in court. What the judge in this case says is you do not have a good chance to succeed in court. Therefore, you are going to be wasting people's time. So unless you can fix your complaint to make it seem like you have a chance in court, it's not going to happen. And based on everything talked about here, it seems like there's just too many failures of the timeline in particular to be able to amend it properly, in my personal opinion. So 20 days is not a lot of time, but at the same time, they can at least just submit something and be like, hey, we are going to amend it, so we just need a little extra time. That's one of the options they have. But the other one here is that they really only talked about jurisdiction, and then jurisdiction was cascading. Because they didn't have jurisdiction, all the other stuff didn't really apply. All the stuff pertaining to fraud did not apply. All the stuff pertaining to domestic offers of securities did not apply. The things that we notably didn't get to were the First Amendment arguments and the idea that Hex, PulseChain, and PulseX are securities. So I know Richard Hart's legal team was very eager to argue the Howey test and really debunk it, but at this point, that was not on the table.
Yep. They done goofed. They done
that
goofed
they did.
Up. And like we couldn't even get past the first couple things, and she's just like, you guys stuck. You got 20 days to fix your complaint. You know, and we've been doing this fuck around for almost a year and some change now, something like that.
We're almost at 2 years, dude, because this dropped July 31st of 2023.
Yep, that's right. So, year and a half, man.
Feels wild.
Fucking ridiculous.
Feels wild.
And when it first dropped, I think, I don't know if we did an analysis on the Degen Roundtable. I remember I was actually driving to Vegas at the time, when that dropped. And I just remember that it was a really shitty complaint. It was not very well written. There was all sorts of incorrect things in there, and like, here we are a year and a half later. Like, hey, now a judge is saying, "Hey guys, you did a pretty shitty job of alleging all these facts, and try again. You got 20 days." So we'll see if the SEC is able to pull their head out of their ass and I don't know, maybe address all of these glaring problems in their complaint. So we'll find out. We'll find out, won't we?
That we will. Alrighty. Let's talk to the good people in the audience and see what they have to say.
There's quite a bit of the chat shout outs here.
Thank you, Sandy Beach.
Yes. And then Chad also had
I saw that one. That was good. That was really good.
Zenith GPT. Yep. Okay. So I'm starring, let me see. I'm starring a bunch of the good ones and also the folks who have joined. So let's see what we got. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, you already know when it's time for chat shoutouts, we got to pull out the fancy schmancy chat shoutouts paper. So here we go. I think when we do our first Degen Roundtable meetup, I'm going to give away this chat shoutouts paper. That's going to be the that's going to be the prize for the folks at home. So you guys will get a piece of the show. I've been carrying this thing around for 2 years now, something like that. But yeah, there we go.
Got it laminated.
Yep, it's laminated. Not laminated very well, but it is laminated. All right, so we're going to go through the chat motherfucking shoutouts, guys. All right, so first and foremost, we've got Mr. Paul Sachs. Nuclear Herbs stated earlier, cases dismissed based upon jurisdiction are usually not amended because jurisdiction are done with prejudice. So, jurisdiction. I don't understand
so the whole prejudice thing is it's talking about whether you can bring a case back or not.
Oh, okay.
In this case, what they're talking about is how, because the SEC has the opportunity to amend the original complaint, this is not dismissed with prejudice. This is dismissed and they have the ability to bring it back. Dismissing with prejudice is like the final stamp. It's saying this issue is resolved. We will deal with it no further. Consider it concluded. Yeah. That's unfortunately not what we got here. But Paul is correct on this one when Nuclear Herbs earlier was talking about how that jurisdiction piece is usually such an important piece that once you show you don't have jurisdiction, it's kind of impossible to get it back because the facts really are not going to change. Therefore, you can't reestablish jurisdiction. So you just can't do it.
I see. Well, excellent. That's some good point you bring up there, Mr. Paul Sachs from Nuclear Herbs. Shout out to Nuclear Herbs, by the way. Y'all should go check him out.
Absolute stud.
Which stream did you say he was on earlier where he was chatting?
Cabana Crypto.
Cabana Crypto. All right, so everyone should go check out Cabana Crypto's YouTube and go see what they were talking about over there. Next up in the chat shoutouts, we've got Miss Crypto Stylist. Congrats, Degens. Thank you, Miss Crypto Stylist. We appreciate that very much. We'll see you down in Vegas, by the way. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good fucking time. Yes, this is some excellent news and excellent work, Zenith, with pulling up the document and being ready to read it and rock and roll and everything. So this is fantastic.
Much appreciated.
Thank you for joining, Crypto Stylist. All right. Next up, we've got Sandy Beaches with the little beach emoji. And then, hey, Zenith and Will, happy belated birthday. And everyone, thank you, Sandy. I appreciate that. That is very kind of you.
Birthday boy.
That's correct. I'm a big kid now. I'm a total of 13 years old. So I can go and buy BB guns and bottle rockets and all the good stuff. So I'm a big kid now. Thanks, Sandy.
Nice.
Next up in the chat shoutouts, we've got Boomtown 143. He's fallen asleep. He's saying we're boring, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. As long as you know how to use this tool that is the Degen Roundtable to whatever goals and purposes you may have in mind. If you need to fall asleep, you put us right on, broski. We'll put you right to sleep sometimes.
Look, the boring part is out of the way. Now we're on to the fun part. We're talking with you guys. We're going to do a little bit more analysis. And I also want to talk about what this means for kind of the ecosystem and potential SEC actions.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be good. So I'm glad that we put you to sleep. And I hope that we hear some more sleeping comments from Brookie. I love the engagement. Next up in the chat shoutouts, we've got Jemmy Replay Gang. Good to see you, Jemmy. Welcome. We always like to have you on stream and in the comments and everything. So glad to see you. I hope you're having a fantastic time. Next up in the chat shoutouts, we've got Russ. Hey, ladies and gentlemen. What's up, Russ? Good to see you, amigo. Welcome to the stream. After that, We've got Hans Majested. Majested. Hans Majested.
That's actually probably correct.
Boy. ER1. Boy, we are one. Boy, we are. Boy, everybody's winning. I fucking love to see it, Hans. I'm or Hans. I'm not entirely sure what you're saying, but yes, we are certainly one. So shout out to you, amigo. We're here to win. We're doing great. Oh man, yeah. And Paul Sachs, I love this comment from earlier, by the way. How many SEC employees got red pilled on cryptocurrency after watching hundreds of hours of Richard Hart content? With the sub presumption of like they had to research for this case, and so they had
somebody had to go through and watch all of the Richard Hart streams to find all the things that they pulled for it. So at some point, the SEC guy might have been sitting there going, "Damn, this guy's cooking! Like I gotta get in on this."
It's so bad. I mean, look at those Gucci watches or something, right? Or just like when he was on Fox News at one point. Richard was.
I think so, yeah.
Talking about like how the Fed is just printing us into smithereens and whatnot. But yeah, like I'd love to think there's some little what do you call the legal interns? There's a word for it.
Oh, the paralegals.
The paralegals, yes. There's a bunch of paralegals out there that are totally.
I mean, it's either that, or it is their summer intern that had to do this.
Yeah. Are the paralegals or the interns or someone, like they're going through the stuff just as much as we are, and they're probably learning a lot about how that stuff works. And maybe once they're done with their stint at the SEC, they're gonna go stake some Hex, Quattro Cinco, or I don't know. Maybe they'll go buy Zen or something. It'll be a good time. But yes, we like to think about the SEC employees getting red pilled. Next up in the chat shoutouts, we've got our favorite Hexican who is lost in Asia, who sold their Hex.
Not here, baby. Not here.
Not me. Although I did trade my Hex. I traded a whole bunch of Hex for a beautiful Hex sword. Shout out to Hex Sword on Twitter, by the way. I've got a beautiful, beautiful cutlass coming in. I didn't spend $1 on it. I spent nothing but Hex. So hopefully we'll get to see how exactly valuable this sword is going to be at the top of the bull market. But if he's okay with me talking about the number of Hex that I bought it for, then I'll probably bring it up at some point, and then everyone can make fun of me for just like the Bitcoin pizza 10,000 Bitcoin for 2
Bitcoin
pizzas.
pizza day.
Yep. So that's my goal. Who sold their Hex? No one's selling their Hex, but we are trading Hex for swords sometimes. So it's good to see a Hexican lost in Asia. Next up in the chat shoutouts, we've got Rocket Mob, and he's got the rocket with the wow, the emojis, and everything going on. It's good to see you, Rocket Mob. We are going to rocket right on up to the moon. I mean, if you just look at these damn prices, man, incentive 77% on the 24-hour, fucking Pulsex 69% on the 24. Man, Hex 61, Wrapped Pulse 35, E-Hex 63%. Like, these are some good ass fucking prices. I guess I could pull up Go Pulse, and I might be able to share that screen. I don't know if I have any doxing information on there. Doesn't look like it. Okay, yeah, I might. Oh, that one doesn't look as fancy. The that might be the hourly chart or something. But I like the 24-hour on Dex Screener. Those ones are much nicer. So it's good to see you, Rocket Mob. Glad that we could have you. We are all going to be blasting off to the moon. Then next up, we got Johnny Chaos. The important words are the SEC fails. That is correct,
Johnny is spot on the mark here. So if you remember, one of the first things that we read about after the history was the threshold for moving forward or granting the motion to dismiss. And even there, we talked about how, when in doubt, the favor has to go to the SEC, meaning the SEC, this should be a layup for them. Like, this should be easy. But they failed even when the advantage was with them.
Yeah,
like we were supposed to defer to the SEC. Guess what? They still didn't make it. The SEC fails is the correct quote that should be taken from this. Yep. They failed to allege jurisdiction. They failed to allege domestic offerings of securities, and they failed to allege fraud. Even when they were granted the benefit of the doubt, they still failed on all three fronts.
It's like, even if we presume all this stuff that you're saying is true, you still suck. And a lot of the SEC, man, I really didn't like the beginning portion of that like the complaints and everything, because like a lot of the shit the SEC is alleging is incorrect. Now, we can't, like, legally they can't say it's incorrect because it has to go to trial in order for this stuff to be proven correctly or not. So like, even when all of their bullshit lies are presumed to be correct, they still fucking suck. So it's like a double whammy because they lose on the truth of the matter, and they also lose on the fact that like even when they're telling their little lies and their little twistings of the stories to try and make it like, you know, shape their narrative, they still fucking suck. So it's like, I don't know what to do for you guys. You know, like those thoughts exist now because we had to read them, and because like other people might presume that there's a lot of things in that SEC's complaint that are true. But like even presuming they're true, it's like it still fucking fails. So it's amusing, and yeah, you're absolutely fucking right, Johnny. The important thing is that the SEC fails.
Correct.
Oh man, the SEC and Zelensky took it on the chin today. Yes. Ooh, maybe we can. I don't know. Perhaps we should save that the Zelensky thing for the Sunday show. I know almost nothing about that one, but
we'll save that one for later. But yeah, that was
amusing.
It got a little spicy, but it's a healthy kind of spicy. I'll say it that way.
A little bit spicy. If you guys don't know, y'all should go check it out.
Sure.
Next up, though, another comment from Johnny Chaos. She did them a favor by laying out all the extra deficiencies, even though they couldn't get through jurisdiction. So, presupposing they're able to like magically shit out a Richard Hart was on like a single patch of American soil during this whole process, like even if they can pull this like, you know, magical rabbit out of their ass and figure some shit out, like she spelled out all the other problems that they were doing. So it's like when your teacher hands you back the test that you failed, you know, and like in addition to the stuff that you failed, here's all the corrections that you need to make to do a better job in the future. So, you know, like I'm like it's not a terrible thing to do that, but it's like, yeah, here's some shit you can do better next time. So hopefully the people that take over at the SEC in the future know like, hey, if we're gonna be playing these games, we know at least to avoid this sort of thing.
It's actually not even, it's kind of that, but it's slightly different. But again, Johnny's actually like right on the spot here. So if you remember when we were talking about the Tornado Cash case out of Texas earlier, what they did is they just looked at that top level thing. They said, because the top level thing doesn't actually meet its own legal definition, therefore the rest of it doesn't matter. So they didn't even analyze the rest of everything that was alleged. In this case, the judge actually did analyze a lot of the other stuff. So theoretically, she could have just stopped at the jurisdiction and said, you failed to prove jurisdiction, therefore I'm granting the motion to dismiss. But instead, she actually took the time and went through the rest of them. Granted, some of the ones that she did go through, a lot of them do rely very heavily on jurisdiction, which means that theoretically, if the SEC was somehow able to prove jurisdiction, or at least prima facie of jurisdiction, which is like more likely than not, then it kind of brings everything else into play. But even then, like Johnny's talking about here, the judge went through and said, here's all the issues with all the other stuff. Step 1 was a fail. We could have stopped there, but steps 2 and 3 also were fails for their own reasons as well. So it's a lot of corrections. And if anything, you could actually read into that and say, because it's not just one thing, but she actually lays out a bunch of stuff and then gives them the 20 days to file the amendment. It's like that could be kind of trying to bury it a little bit, but that might be a little too much of reading between the lines.
It's there's a lot of things that I don't understand, and that is one of them. So I will leave that analysis to you, my friend.
That's definitely in the speculative area for sure. It's closer to tinfoil hat than legal analysis, but
yeah.
It is an interesting to throw out there.
Yep. And we do have Mr. Farmer Brown.
Year and a half of pain.
Year and a half of pain. Yeah, bros. It has been a year and a half of significant discomfort. But you know, it's better than discomfort is hanging out with you fucking amigos and reading these chats. Speaking of the next one that we got, Mr. OB Spark Driver, that what I think looks like a white version of Fat Albert. Let's go, guys. Let's get this paper. I've never actually watched Fat Albert, so I know nothing. But yeah, we're gonna get this fucking paper, bro. We're gonna make these digital ones and zeros. Well, actually, who knows? Maybe we don't get this paper. Maybe we just get these. We get these tokens. We get these T-shares. We get these. Get these great little ones and zeros telling us that we're wealthy and beautiful. So that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Spark Driver, for hopping on in here. Glad to see you, buddy. Sandy Beach with more smiliness. I think that's a hug emoji. Pretty sure. Good to see you, Sandy. After that, we've got Mind of Tron. Great stream, guys. Thank you. Yes, sir. It is our pleasure to be
Not
here
even
bringing
over.
you guys all the
Still
special
going.
sauce. Yeah, we're still fucking going. I ain't even finished yet. Speaking of, we've got Mr. Brightlight. Shout out to Brightlight, by the way. Y'all should go check out his channel as well. Congrats, boys. Well deserved. Thank you, sir. This is a great one. We've got quite a few folks that are watching us right now. Remember, you guys, to smash that like button, or like that smash button rather. It's good to see you though, Brightlight. welcome to the stream. Nothing but agreeable nature from this fantastic gentleman. So I would go so far as to say, yep. And that's what we've got for. Oh no, excuse me. There's more chat shoutouts. Look at this. We've got more of them rolling in. We've got Brendan of the Degen Roundtable. Good to see you, Brendan. One of the founders of the show. Let's go, boys. We knew this was going to happen. You're absolutely right. We knew this was good. Well, I'll say that I didn't know it was going to happen. I was hoping it would happen, but like I know almost nothing, and I also don't pay attention to a whole lot of the news very, very closely. Just kind of go with the flow.
I was hoping it was going to happen. If you've been following the show, you'll know that one of the things I've been quoting for a while is talking with Nuclear Herbs. He's like, the average motion to dismiss is granted like 10% of the time.
Yeah.
But he said, because the facts were so well argued in this one and the SEC was so underprepared, he gave it up to about that 50-50. So pretty much it was a coin toss. Granted, we have the results now. But at the same time, though, not saying it was expected, but like if you were there, it's hard to argue against the case that was presented. Like they killed it. They absolutely killed it.
It was so cool sitting in that courtroom. I'm so glad I got to like experience a little bit of history with that. Like never does like 70 people show up into a motion to dismiss in like a random ass, hearing where it's only lawyers and judges. It's like, nah, dude, the people showed up to support it. We were there having fun, eating pizzas, going on walks, like Halloween walks in New York afterwards. It was a great time. Met lots of cool people. I certainly inferred and really did hope that this would happen, and I'm pretty glad to see it. I honestly would have preferred again it going to actual like court or like going to trial or whatever the word is. I would have loved to see that and then see like some precedent set as far as like all this security stuff goes, but like we'll take what we can get. So you're absolutely right, Brendan. We certainly were under the impression that this was going to be the case. Next up, we got a little bit of technical analysis from our very favorite farmer under the bridge. The pulse X to pulse ratio is almost 1-to-1. Yes, if you guys remember when Pulse Chain launched, I want to say it was like 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 for pulse X for
it was about 4-to-1, yeah.
Yeah, so Pulse X Pulse done pretty damn good.
Pump's real
damn
good.
So you're absolutely right. And then other people commenting on that stuff. And then Brendan again, 1.5 years of being able to accumulate bags that I never thought possible. That's one of the cool key tickets here, is that we had so much time to get so many cool things. Like man, I was looking at the hex to pulse X ratio earlier, and it dropped all the way down to where you could exchange. Let me see. The wick was at 270 pulse X for 1 hex. So if you guys caught that wick earlier, that looks like it happened right around 4 p.m. Then you could have exchanged quite a bit of pulse X for hex, and it's come back up to a more stable 320 something, right now. So that's pretty damn cool. So pulse X is looking pretty strong against hex right now. For the time being, at least. But yeah, Brandon's absolutely right. Like 1.5 years of packing bags, because we've just been down bad for so fucking long. Those of us that have been buying this whole time, shout out to everyone down there dropping fat stacks when these prices are low, and just like hoping that we're not throwing our money down the drain. Like it's been a trying time, but it's been super cool and super awesome. So
very true.
Right. Miss Cassie has a compliment for you, Z. Great rating, Z. So yes, you
much
did
appreciated.
An fantastic job.
Alrighty, I do have a few screen shares from the old Twitter.
Yes, I see you've got it. I'm gonna pull it up now, but first I'm gonna prep the background. So we've got that, and then I do this number. Bam! Look at that.
There you go. From Richard Hart Wynn himself. I appreciate Judge Amon's careful ruling, which has dismissed all of the SEC's claims against me. This type of victory over the SEC is quite rare. Pulse Chain, Pulse X, and Hex are not securities and should be allowed to flourish. Hex has operated flawlessly over 5 years. Today's decision in favor of a cryptocurrency founder and his project over the SEC brings welcome relief and opportunity to all cryptocurrencies. Thank you, President Trump, for supporting cryptocurrency. And then posts a link to the document. And from earlier, case dismissed. Thank you, Judge Amon. There you go.
It's cool stuff.
We have shout out to our buddy Nuclear Herbs. He said, as we just discussed on stream with Cabana Crypto and Big Kurkowski, we can't let anyone lose sight of the fact that Richard Hart beat the SEC in court. The SEC did not voluntarily choose to drop the case because of new policies or leadership. They did not voluntarily stop investigating him. They took their best shot in court and lost. Don't let anyone from any corner of the crypto world try to frame it any differently. Richard Hart won. He beat the SEC in court.
Yep. There we go.
There you go.
Great.
That is
Very important.
This actually came after the stream he did with Cabana Crypto. In there, I talked about how the SEC this last week actually dropped investigations into 4 separate cryptocurrency things. I'm pretty sure it was Consensus, Gemini, and 2 others. But the big ones was Gemini and then Consensus, which notably runs MetaMask. This kind of felt like I was looking at all those cases that happened earlier in the week, and I was like, the winds are changing. Like, we got a lot of momentum going. I feel like something's going to happen. I was not expecting this to happen this week. If anything, I was kind of expecting to show up to Vegas next week and have to talk about, like, yeah, we're still waiting, but there's a lot of things pointing to that thing actually being granted. But this happened, and it's important to notice, exactly as Nuclear Herbs pointed out here, this is different in kind than the rest of the crypto wins that have been happening lately. This is not the SEC dropping investigations on their own or finding settlements or whatever. No. This is the judge actually ruling on it, ruling on the motion to dismiss, and it was found to be good. So the motion was dismissed. The SEC lost. Yes, they do have time to appeal. However, at the same time, though, he does bring up a good point here, which is that we've talked about how the SEC does not have their lead chair appointed yet. That would be Paul Atkins. He's still waiting Senate confirmation. But in the meantime, we did get the letter from the SEC other chairs talking about how their new approach to crypto is going to go and how they're more pointed towards personal responsibility and that the government's not here to bail you out on everything and that there are different kinds of cryptos. That was the first time that we heard the SEC from their actual podium talking about how there's more than just claiming everything is a security. So because of that, I think that the direction for the SEC right now is to not expend a bunch of resources pursuing a lot of the old legal cases that they've been pursuing under Gary Gensler's leadership. So instead, I personally believe that we're actually not going to see an amendment from the SEC. If anything, leadership at the SEC is going to be like, all right, whatever, take the L, just move on, find better things to do. Because in my personal opinion, based on all the literature that the SEC has been putting out, this appears to no longer be something that they want to pursue. And to overwrite a loss in this case is going to take a lot of effort. And that's a lot of effort that I don't think they're willing to expend at this moment. So overall, I think this is a massive, massive win for Richard Hart. What do you think, Will? I
think you're absolutely right, bro. And it's certainly a massive, massive win. I was describing earlier what I would have preferred, but this is still awesome. I gotta say, like, this is some pretty cool stuff. Did not expect this, but at least right now, Not right now, anyways. I was ready for another several months of down bad and all that. So this is good, very good. But
by the way, I found this tweet. Don't want to say I'm supporting my thesis, but I am supporting my thesis. Eleanor Terrett, I believe we covered another one of her tweets on the show the other week, but she is a Fox Business journalist, and she shared a very similar sentiment to what I just talked about. Looks like the judge in the Richard Hart case granted his lawyer's motion to dismiss the SEC's charges against him. A little bit different to the dismissals we've seen coming directly from the SEC, which is the SEC dismissing themselves as opposed to the court dismissing them. According to the ruling, the SEC now has 20 days to file an amendment complaint. However, given the regulatory environment being so favorable towards crypto right now and enforcement cases being dropped left and right, the agency may not choose to pursue it. I happen to agree, as I previously talked about.
I think it's pretty fucking nifty. We're getting coverage from all sorts of people.
True. And by the way, nature appears to be healing a little bit. So Nuclear Herbs, our good friend again, he actually retweeted Charles Hoskinson's, notably the Cardano guy. He said, well, let me be the first to apologize to Richard Hart. So there you go. It looks like things are healing here. Nature is returning. The world will be better. Although, and then I do have a few more things from our new friend Shillgates. He says, was expecting a God candle, not gonna lie. This is pathetic. We pumped more off the OA stake. Good sir, I hear you. I hear you. But hear me out. Hear me out. When XRP won its most recent court case, It did a 6x over 28 days. This is not even 6 hours old yet. So I think patience might be the key here. But at the same time, though, like, all the lights are green right now. Everything is primed to pump. We had the reduction in incentive supply from PulseX distribution for farming. So the liquidity pools down. The OA address was staking up massively. That changed the amount of hex being released to the market. So it should decrease the amount of sell pressure. Additionally, shout out to my name is Don't Care What My Name Is. I believe he mentions that the OA is buying up PulseX right now. This is just a rumor. I haven't confirmed it yet, but I have been seeing a lot of message traffic about this. So we have that. We now have this dismissal, which A, is just great news in general, but B, there are no more reasons not to list any of these tokens on a centralized exchange or decentralized exchange. Therefore, Uniswap, where are you at? Let's relist Hex. Come on, let's get it going.
We don't need Uniswap. Fuck them. That's my 2 cents. Just
we
kidding. We love you, Uniswap. Why don't you go ahead and do something that would earn you back some respect? Hex is what made Uniswap in the beginning. Like, that was the lion's share of the transactions when Uniswap came out. It was people trading Hex and Ethereum. And
look, you are correct.
Back and forth between them. We like
Do
Hex
we
made
need
Uniswap.
it?
No, we don't need it.
We don't
love
need it. Would it help?
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely, it would help.
If they stopped gatekeeping us for their arbitrary reasons, like, that it'd be pretty kick-ass. Shout out to MRock Jockey, by the way. MRock Jockey has joined us since we're doing a couple of the chat shoutouts. And then Johnny Chaos also brought up this. I agree, this is out without them having to retract the case. So
correct. I will say, on the charts, some good green candles, good volume too. That's the most important thing here. Volume is very important. Let's go look at PulseX. PulseX, I think, is the big winner of the day.
Oh yeah, PulseX been doing very good.
PulseX actually had more volume back in early February.
Incentive might be up more than PulseX. I could be
I think
wrong.
incentive might be the winner.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like an 80% swing.
For true. And let's look at the granddaddy of them all, Hex. We got some bump in volume. Okay. There's hopefully more to come. Johnny Chaos, I am not sorry what I said about Chuck. Still true.
I mean, it was true.
Look,
it was true and it was relevant. It's like we can speak about things that are true and things that are correct.
it is true.
It's good that Chuck apologized because Chuck made allegations. What Johnny did is Johnny described what Chuck is doing. So like Chuck presumed on the like Chuck's actions presumed guilty when presumed guilt when there is none. And so when there was no longer guilt, then he apologized. Johnny's like, "Hey Chuck, you're being a silly goose. And here's why." And then was proven correct. And so it's like you don't gotta retract for that. By the way, shout out to Funkmaster Hex who has joined us. Ladies and gentlemen, what a good evening. It's good to see you, Funkmaster Hex. Welcome, sir.
True. By the way, for the last Twitter share I have is there was a funny coincidence found by Hexologist. He says, literally, the planets are aligning tonight. Cannot make this stuff up. NASA says 7 planets will align tonight. When is the last time that this happened?
Oh my God.
I'm just saying. Yeah.
You look long enough, you can find all sorts of cool things. I will say that it's neat that that all these things are happening. Actually, I should write this in my daily journal for stuff that happened today. That's pretty cool.
That's not bad at all.
Mexi better do us right.
Yeah, Mexi was one of the most recent listings, but well, Binance would be epic. But again, I think we'll be happy with what we get.
Ooh, we've got Mr. Fast Abdul launching more comments over here. Johnny Chaos, welcome to Pulse Chain. We love you. Ink is the winner. Yes, Ink is indeed the winner. And then, oh man, Fast Abdul has a pretty cool idea here about somebody using incentive as a collateral for a stablecoin. Much like the other forks of liquidity that are happening on Pulse Chain. You guys can go check out the Ascending Man show where Nate talked with Fast Abdul about this stuff earlier. So that went. I have not watched that one yet, but I hear that it went pretty damn good. Let me fix our background here. Look at that. Bam. Doing the
already will. I want to cap off the show tonight with a little bit more conversation about. We talked about the SEC and what's going on right now. Obviously, the SEC is moving in a new direction under the Trump administration. We've seen executive orders. We've seen literature from the SEC themselves talking about the new approaches to crypto. And we also have the new Crypto Advisory Council under the president giving some guidance to the SEC as well here. We haven't gotten through the official timeline for all of the proposals yet, but we're getting there. And we don't have Paul Atkins confirmed by the Senate yet. So there are some things still up in the air, but overall, I think the direction is very, very clear where things are going right now. The wins are absolutely in the sales of crypto. We've had a lot of legal wins, including this one. We are seeing the power of the government, specifically the SEC and whatnot, is starting to pull back, starting to contain itself, actually. I think these are all very good things for the crypto industry, especially if the goal, as President Trump talked about, which is to bring crypto back to U.S. shores. Stuff like this is important. Let's talk about what today was not, though. So this will be somewhat precedent in legal cases for here on out. We got more clarification on specifically jurisdiction, and we got a good bit of clarification on domestic securities offerings, what that entails, and securities fraud. But those, again, were largely jurisdiction based. So what this was not, this unfortunately was not a absolute dismissal of the Howey test that the SEC was previously trying to apply to everything. We didn't talk about in the dismissal. It was not covered. It was none of that. Additionally, the other notable thing that was missing from the initial motion to dismiss was Section 5, which was the First Amendment violations. So they didn't make any kind of overture towards talking about how the proposed SEC restrictions would violate Richard Hart's freedom of speech, nor did it talk about how blockchain is freedom of speech, how code is freedom of speech, all that stuff. We didn't touch either of those topics. So as it stands right now, this was absolutely a win for crypto and for Richard Hart and Hex, PulseChain, PulseX. Not going to try to downplay that at all. Take your wins, celebrate it. Be good sports about it, obviously, but also take the win when you get it and celebrate it. At the same time, though, understand the things that are still out there are the Howey test. I think there's a good chance that we might see that overturned here shortly. Richard Hart's legal team was very happy to try to take that on. But again, the point in the game that we were at here was not arguing over the facts and not trying to relitigate old case law that it might be bad, but just trying to see if there was something to go on. So we didn't get that. Additionally, the First Amendment stuff. In my personal opinion, anytime you make a First Amendment claim, it's either one of two things. It is two things simultaneously. It is kind of a Hail Mary, but also at the same time, it's a Hail Mary in the sense that it will win the game. It is one of those things where if you can actually prove First Amendment violations, it theoretically is something that can absolutely blow a case wide open. We didn't get that this time. I was not expecting that, and I don't think a lot of other people were. I think that a lot of the DeFi folks are still very much correct in believing that code is speech, and that the ability to publish on the blockchain and the ability to publish code is also free speech. I still do believe that as well, and I think it's well-founded. We didn't touch it here, so that stuff still is up in the air and unargued. But overall, though, jurisdiction, big win for jurisdiction, I think. The Binance case was the case against jurisdiction, which was you can't claim to be nowhere, but if you can claim to be somewhere and you follow applicable securities laws, you're in the clear. You're golden. And that's what we saw here today.
I don't know how much I like that. I do like the idea of being able to claim nowhere as a thing. You know, I know that it's not realistic. I know that you can't get away with it at sea, right?
We all have a corporeal form, so to speak.
Yeah,
it exists
it's like,
somewhere.
oh, you're tied to some fucking country. Like if I go sailing around the Gulf of America in my little Gulf of America cruiser, and like the Coast Guard pulls me over and gives me a speeding ticket, you know, it's like if I'm not flying a country's flag, the Coast Guard's going to presume that I'm, you know, an American, part of America, and therefore I fall under American law. Like if I fly a Spanish flag, then they're going to call up Spain and they're being like, hey, we got this ship. You guys cool if we board it? Or if like I've got an Egypt flag, they're going to be like, hey, Egypt, we got this ship. Is it cool if we board it? You know, if I'm flying a Malta flag, then Malta's like, hey, I don't know who the fuck these guys are. I don't regulate them. Get out of here. You know, like they did with Binance. Or like there's a ton of countries that maybe I could fly an Antarctica flag or something. I don't fucking know. But if you're not flying a flag of some fucking country, then the United States is like, aha, you must belong to us. Come on over here now, and we're gonna fucking snake you out of these international waters. But it's
actually a good explanation of international maritime law.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a bunch of bullshit, but it's, it is what it is. I can't change it, and that's just the meat and potatoes of it. I am glad that, Richard was like, hey, I'm in Finland, so why don't y'all fuck off, right? Like if that's what actually happened, or if it was just the SEC alleging that he's a Finnish person, doesn't really matter. The fact that they were not able to stand on the jurisdiction, like, oh, excuse me, the fact that the jurisdiction didn't stand is it works. I'm satisfied. I'm glad that it did the thing that it did, and that it got us to where we are, and that we can now, throw parties and shake our booties around, and be all happy, and dance and do the good stuff. So that's my
That's
thoughts on the whole thing. Would
hey,
I
good
preferred
stuff.
better stuff? Yeah. Did I want to fight? A little bit. But, I'll take the win. I'll take the W.
Absolutely. I think Vegas is absolutely going to be a party. By the way, folks, if you are going to the Pulse Chain Conference, the Pulse 369 Conference in Las Vegas, March 6th through 9th, both Will and myself will be there with some other folks at the Degen Roundtable. Will and I will be emceeing. I'm actually going to be appearing on a legal panel. So all of the prep work that I did for that legal panel has now gone out the window because the case has been resolved. So I got to do a little more prep before I see you guys next week. If you have any questions that you want to ask regarding to anything crypto legal landscape, some upcoming cases, what this case means, why it's important, and that stuff, we'll be more than happy to take your questions there. I'll be sitting there with Nuclear Herbs, and gosh, I can't remember who else is on my panel. It's actually a heavy hitters panel, and I got to bring my A game for that one. I'm excited. But yeah, Pulse 369 is coming up. If you don't have your tickets yet, go get your tickets now at pulsechaintour.com. Use code DGEN at checkout. You'll get an extra 10% off. Alrighty, outside of that though, we
have the video, but it's not in this set. I'd have to change from Campfire Stories into a different one. I'll see what I can do.
True. Folks, you can find me on Twitter, X rather, at ZenithDI. I've been posting some good stuff with regards to the Richard Hart case, a little bit of TLDR you can repost if you want to just get the message out there. And go, please, go follow Nuclear Herbs on Twitter. Awesome dude. If you want to hear more from him, you can see him in Vegas, but please give us a follow. And if you want to get into our Telegram, where you can continue this conversation and see some good memes and people just taking a good victory lap, check out the QR code down here, and that will take you over to our Telegram chat. By the way, we got Corey Geary of the DeFi Crypto Alliance sneaking in here. Good to see you, my man. Congratulations to you as well. This has been a long fight, but we're all doing great stuff.
An excellent stream earlier today, Corey. I enjoyed it. That was a good time.
For sure.
Check out the Nuclear Herbs. And then for those of you guys that are on the replay gang, or you're listening and not watching, the way that you join the Degen Roundtable Telegram is you just go to your little URL at the top of your web browser and you type in t.me/DRT join now. If you're watching us live, you can click on the link in the live chats off to the side. And yeah, that's what we've got. Zenith, you said that they can find you at x.com/Zenith DI, also Instagram and other socials as well. Shout out to everybody. Thank you all for watching. I suppose I should say where you guys can find me. You guys can find, let's see, what should I drop? I'll drop my Facebook. You guys can find me at facebook.com/will.stevenson III. That's where you can find me this week. I will put my Facebook up there for you guys. I'm a bit of a troll on Facebook, but it's a good time. It's good to see everybody. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for hopping on. At some point, we'll cover this book that we were suggested not but a few days ago. And then on Sunday, we'll be talking about some more stuff. I'm going to be podcasting mobile because I will be out of a house and in a car, or I might be hanging out over with some amigos. But yeah, it's been it's been an awesome show. Let's see. Any other announcements? Have we forgotten anything?
All good. We are guest hosting the FN Hangout tonight. I believe we are interviewing part of the Fast Abdul's cabal over there, talking about an incentive token backed project. So we'll be learning more about that tonight. See you guys over there. And like everyone said in the chat, congratulations to everybody. Stuck through the hard times. Good times are here. Enjoy yourselves.
Yes, it's a good one. Alrighty, so time to read this end of the show copyright again, making sure that I have my end clips ready to click on here. All right. We the debauched, in the pursuit of chaotic and SEC blasting harmony, unite to form a more questionable union and establish strictly unregulated fund to ensure a steady flow of libations and provide for our collective shenanigans, all while promoting the art of bad decision making and securing the blessings of free-spirited vibes to ourselves and future party animals, do hereby establish this glorious podcast aimed at indulgence and excess for all who dare to live recklessly. Will you join us and turn down for what? I want to thank all of you here, or I want to thank all of you for spending your valuable time with us here on the Degen Roundtable. As Agent J often says, we know that time is your most valuable asset, and we appreciate you spending that valuable asset right here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Will Stevenson, but more importantly, you have been watching the Degen Roundtable. Mr. Producer, go ahead and get that trigger finger ready, because it's time to remind all the folks at home to remember to degen responsibly.